Today, while speaking to you, I am sitting at a place which I love most. This is one of the 164 centers of Prayas, a girls' home. My daughters, 50 of them, they live here. And then I work from here also. I have a small office here. So, this is the best ambience to talk to you. I wish I was in person with you and talk to you in person. COVID times, I'm sorry, it's not there. Friends, when I arrive to you, when I'm talking to you, well, I come from two very different directions. See, one direction happens to be my police career. I worked as an IPS officer for nearly 34 years, starting from the position of Assistant Superintendent of Police till DGP Police of Goa and Arunachal Pradesh, one part of it. Alongside, I worked in CBI, did some big cases. I'll talk about it later. I had a very, very eventful career. And this career was violent at times. It was very serious many a times, majority of times. So that is one part of me. Well, it culminated on a very different note when after relieving the service, I was the first chairman of Child Rights for Delhi Commission for Child Rights, which gave me an opportunity to look something from a very different angle because the police and the child rights, the police and human rights, they don't go in sync. They appear to be in different tunes altogether. But that was there. So my life appears to be, to me as it appears, maybe to you also it appears, to be a combination of two very, very at times contradictory profiles. Police, as you understand very well, has a different kind of format to work, has different kind of character. And Prayas, the organization which I happened to start while being a policeman in 1988, went along with the police till date, 34 years now in Prayas also. And Prayas is not the only thing which I did in the voluntary sector. Apart from Prayas, there are several other organizations and activities which engaged me all these years. And chance would have it that as Deputy Commissioner of Police Crimes of Delhi in 1988, I started Prayas in one of the most violent decades of Delhi. 1980s was the most violent decade. 1984 riots, assassinations and killings galore, bomb blasts, any number of them. In those times, well, a small problem was there which was troubling me a bit. A lot of children who were homeless, who had no place to go, children who committed small crimes, maybe, children who were neglected, not being looked after by anybody. They used to fall in the lap of police officers in Delhi. And since I was in charge of something called Missing and Found Squad of Delhi Police, children being part of it, it was a problem to keep these children somewhere, to look after them for a very small period. That was one part which was my official duty in Delhi Police. And suddenly something more happened. A very small story about it. Well, it was a morning, a Sunday morning, or perhaps a Saturday morning in 1988. The Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, Air Marshal H.L. Kapoor, he calls me up in the morning and tells me that he wants me to come to a slum area or a settlement colony called Jahangirpuri in North Delhi. I said, sir, what's the matter? Why am I being called to be there? He said that there's a big fire. So I said, sir, you can't take the chief fire officer along. Well, no, no, you are supposed to come with me and come along with me. So I decided, all right. So both of us, the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi and myself, we went to Jahangirpuri, a huge slum area with nearly 3 lakh population then, maybe now it's about 5 lakhs. And there was a big fire. Nearly 1,000 houses had got gutted. Maybe 1,000 children also came on the road. When I looked at them and I found that they needed some kind of support. I wasn't very clear what kind of support, but they became homeless, they became destitute, they suffered heavily on account of fire. The Air Marshal thought, the Lieutenant Governor, that I'm trying to say something. And suddenly it occurred to me that why not start a small institution, an organization for children. And that is how Prayas was born out of fire. In fact, friends, majority of voluntary organizations, majority of those organizations who are in the service of humanity, actually they are created out of some situation. The situation could be a disaster, could be a crisis, and here was a fire which started Prayas. That is one part of it. Now, I carried out both the activities together, the job of my police officer's job on the one hand, and the voluntary action through Prayas, on the other hand, for nearly 20 years, as I told you. So it was there something, which is going with me till date, that how two very different types of activities can be brought together. I mean, there could be certain kind of seamlessness, which doesn't appear to be likely, but to me, it appeared to be likely that as a social worker, you perhaps do the same thing what you do as a police officer. Although I had a hard-hitting career, a lot of violence, a lot of cases, a lot of crimes, but even then, I thought that ultimately you work with the people. You work for the people who happen to be somewhere in crisis. And when you work for society also as a social worker, you are also again working for a crisis, disaster, that kind of situation. So there is no big difference between the two. So, in a way, in my entire life and career, these two different types of activities, I had a task to combine them and to make a life a seamless affair. So, this is something which is very important. Well, since we are on the subject, yeah, let me tell you that while I was talking about 1980s, 84 riots took place. People say who looked after and investigated and inquired into the performance of Delhi police and others in 84 riots that perhaps I succeeded in saving those who became kind of targets of violence in Delhi, as you know, the Sikhs. And then soon after the riots came another phase when a lot of bomb blasts took place. And I had the opportunity to investigate nearly 100 transistor bomb blast cases that took place in Delhi and 5 states of India. That was my kind of role towards investigating the crimes which came as a reprisal of the 84 riots done by the victims of 84 riots. Then, of course, Lalit Makan, member of parliament, was killed. Arjun Das, who was very close to Gandhi family, a councillor, was killed. General A.S. Vaidya, who happened to be the chief of army staff, who had not led but supervised the Golden Temple operation. That is, you know it very well about that. So they were all assassinated by the people because the army assault on Golden Temple had gone into the hearts of people, which led to the assassination of Mrs. Gandhi. And assassination led to all these crimes, all these violence, and all these bomb blasts, which I had a chance to investigate. Besides that, since I had opportunity to work as Deputy Commissioner of Police Crime in Delhi for 5 long years, and I was leading the counter-terrorist operations, when I joined CBI in 1991, the first case which came to me was Rajiv Gandhi assassination. The former Prime Minister of India. Something happened in Chennai and something happened in Sri Lanka, and he was assassinated. He was killed by LTT. So, because of my experience in the counter-terrorist cases, I was handpicked for that case, and I remained in Chennai for nearly 1 year investigating Rajiv Gandhi case. So, that is the kind of cases I did. Subsequently, friends, you would like to know that among important investigations, well, Jaska Lal case, much talked about case, BMW case, Ramesh Sharma case, and the notorious Tihar escape case of Charles Sobraj. All of it I had a chance to investigate in my career in Delhi Police and CBI, etc. Well, recently a book has been published by Bloomsbury, my police memoirs, which is called Khaki in Dust Storm. The second one is likely to come. So now, of course, this is one part of my life. I do not know what message I am communicating to you by narrating these stories. But the other part of life was the voluntary sector. The voluntary organizations are extremely important for India. This country has a lot of contradictions. Today, when we are there in 2021 and we look at what has been happening recently, perhaps you'd know that nearly 83% of India's population got very, very badly affected on account of COVID. The migrants suffered a lot. You know the stories about the migrants. Majority of population who happen to be not so rich, middle class, lower classes economically, they suffered a lot. That is one part of it. Now I read this story that the number of billionaires in India has astronomically gone up. As against 100 billionaires, today we have got 141 billionaires who became billionaires during the past 1 and 2 years during COVID times. I understand that on the one hand, majority of Indians suffered heavily economically, became poorer than before. The rich became richer. Why it happened, one has to see. And when I work for the people, these kind of people who are deprived and poor, well, I have some interest in their life, and I try to understand what's happening around me. I would like you to understand what's happening around you, because that is how it makes a person to be socially conscious and socially useful. Now, there is something I would like to narrate very briefly about it. When you look at India's socio-economic profile, you find that on the one hand, India happens to be fifth largest economy in the world. Incidentally, India also happens to be third biggest military power. That is one part of it. On the other side, if you look at the poverty and deprivation in this country, well, I think the latest reports are extremely alarming. It's really startling for us that in the latest human development indicators, India's position happens to be 130 or 129 among about 188 countries. Recently, Niti Aayog, Niti Aayog has a body called CSO Standing Committee, of which I happen to be joint coordinator now. Leading voluntary organizations are members of it. So I fall back on Niti Aayog's reports, which is India's think tank led by the Prime Minister of India. Now, there a report has come that multi-dimensional assessment of poverty indicates that nearly 23% of Indians happen to be below poverty line. In states like Bihar and other states, 50%, more than 50% people, they happen to be below poverty line. So that is one part of it. So human development indicators, the poverty indicators, the hunger index, the latest hunger index says that India's position on the hunger index globally used to be 97 and now it has become 107. It's a very sad situation that a country which is so powerful, a country which happens to be among the world's largest economy, also happens to be among the most poor in the Committee of Nations. So, this kind of contradiction, well, I think personally, since I'm trying to understand myself, where do I stand and where do you stand in the given situation, I'd like to further narrate that, well, this contradiction is not something which is unreal. This contradiction is not something which is far away. It is next to you, it is around us, and we should be conscious of it. Now, this is broadly the understanding through which I work and through which I operate, both in the government and outside, wherever I had chance to operate, but more in the social sector and voluntary sector, because India has nearly 3.2 million voluntary organizations, and Prayas, of which I happen to be the founder secretary, working for 34 years now, happen to be maybe amongst leading 200 organizations because we have nearly 600 professionals working for us. We have 164 centers operating in 10 states of India. So we are there close to close. Nearly 40,000 footprint is there in Prayas every day. So we try to help those people, those women, those children, those youth, those kind of people who are deprived and poor. So that is part of it. So this is a kind of scenario when I am talking to you friends and I am trying to make you understand where do we stand and what exactly we are supposed to do. Well, it occurs to me that if you understand India's developmental process and the sectors under which this country has to operate, on the one hand, you have got the democratic institutions from panchayat to parliament who are very powerful, who happen to be the real masters in the democratic process. Second is India's bureaucracy, which is equally powerful and really controls this country, of which I was a part for nearly 34 years. The third happens to be the market economy, where India has become a very powerful country. And we have got any number of startups, any number of unicorns, brilliant youngsters making big deals. All that is happening on the third side. And the fourth happens to be India's voluntary sector, about which I have told just now. And this voluntary sector, that is civil society organizations, call them non-governmental organizations, call them community-based organizations, they are very, very important and more important for the reason that these are the organizations which are supposed to bring about some kind of change, socio-economic transformation, where the gap between rich and poor is less, where those millions and millions of people who are suffering a great deal, they are supported, they are looked after. This is the job of the voluntary sector. The voluntary organizations are supposed to do it. And when you talk of voluntary organizations, let me clarify another position that there's something called social sector. The social sectors and the voluntary sector, they interface. In the government parlance, or maybe in the parlance of common developmental process, the social sector is represented by or represents the children, who are deprived, the children, the women, the elderly, the disabled, and these kind of people. These different segments of society who need our support, for whom the voluntary sector also operates across the country. On the other side, thematically, we talk about health, we talk about education, we talk about poverty alleviation, we talk about environment. These are the various areas in which the government has a very, very important role to play. I mean, the government's role in the social sectors and the voluntary organizations' role in the social sector, they coalesce. They have the same ground to operate. And that is where I say that the value of the voluntary organizations is really such that it can't be exaggerated, and it has to be a partnership. And the partnership between the government, the market economy, or the corporate or the business houses, and the voluntary organizations is extremely important. I wish India's political masters, or those who are in the politics and in the business of being the representatives of the country at different levels, they also had the sensitivity to understand what is their role in the social sector, what is their role as voluntary sector also. There is no contradiction between, let's say, the police operating on the one side or the government officials operating in a democratic system, or the politicians operating on the different side who also happen to be for the people, by the people, of the people, and the voluntary organizations which are supposed to be part and parcel of the society, civil society organizations and systems. They also operate on the ground for the people. So these are basically, kind of situations which may appear to be a little chaotic because this country is so chaotic, so complex. But ultimately, we are talking about this vast country, this powerful country, this country with huge multiplicity, this country with huge pluralism, this country with any number of castes and classes and religions and communities all living together, working together. So, broadly speaking, all these situations are extremely important. And I would like to point out further that India's constitution is the real document. In fact, behind me, there is a constitution here. And India's constitution is so important and it's becoming more and more important because it gives in the preamble, it's a sovereign, democratic, secular, socialist society, or maybe the country that we try to create. Each one is loaded expression. And perhaps India's constitution gives us an opportunity to understand the future. It's a dream document and I really admire it. So friends, whether you are in the government or you happen to be in voluntary sector or you happen to be a policeman like me or maybe some official who has to do the law enforcement, which is again meant for the people only ultimately, our task is same, and the task is to make the society better, to make India a better country, a more holistic, a more friendly, a more unified, a more powerful, and more successful country. I'm not giving a message to you. I'm only articulating what I think and the life I have led. Thank you.